All right. So if you are looking for Rentwise 101, you are in the right place, and we welcome you this morning. Happy to have you here. Give you a little bit of information about who we are. I'm Lori Hendrickson. I'm an extension educator out of the Grand Rapids Regional Office. And my cohort here today is Sarah Kryman. Sarah, do you want to say anything?
Welcome. I am officed out of our Morris Regional Office, co-located with the West Central Research and Outreach Center there. So we're so pleased to have everybody here today.
So, and just to give you a little background, I am the person right now that really does do a lot of the Rentwise education or online train the trainer and responding to questions if things come up from those that are teaching it. So just know that if you have questions about it, either one of us can respond to. Sarah has done a lot of teaching in Rentwise as well, but programmatically, if you need help with the online course or anything like that, I'm the one to help you out with that. So we have a poll here, and Cindy, do you want to pull up our poll for us? And we have just one simple question. Why are you participating in today's webinar? Is it for personal use, professional use, or both? Kind of gives some perspective on what people's interests are. And we have 100% participating. We'll go ahead and end that poll and share the results. And yeah, most people are then participating today for personal and professional use. Thank you so much for that. And let's see, we'll eliminate that from the screen. So
thank you, Emily and John, for sharing stories in the chat. That's great.
Oh, those stories, you know, sometimes you have good stories. Sometimes there are some horror stories that, or, you know, the other thing I always think about is the things you didn't know when you were actually a first-time renter and what you might have done as a result. But thank you for those. So we also wanted to tell you about our webinar producer. Cindy Weber is with us. She is providing technical support, monitoring our chat, and she'll provide links that we mention along the way. And so if there are any problems that come up, please feel free to chat with Cindy, and she will try to help you out as best she can. And so our agenda today then is to be thinking about learning how to find, keep, and maintain a stable home environment. You know, stability is really the key here, and we have many studies that talk about stability for children and what it means in terms of their education and just life in general, making friends and having that stable environment. And it's true of adults as well. It's important for us to have stable home environments to be able to handle employment and such as we go along. We're also identifying tools and strategies to secure housing and to manage our money resources as best we can, and discuss effective communication strategies that support good relationships with property manager and neighbors. Our Rentwise booklet, our workbook, and hopefully you have downloaded this already. I'm trying to get a good picture with my screen being blurred in the background. It's hard to see, but you can download this and use this. If an individual that is renting were to have the workbook and maybe either a 3-ring binder or just a simple 2-pocket folder to put rental agreements and such in, that information together would give you a good solid background for renting and knowing where to look for information if you should need it related to your rental. And so we always talk to people about keeping track of all of those things together. Our workbook is divided into 3 units: acquiring your rental housing, sustaining your home environment and relationships, and then aspiring to your future and housing. They are color coded, so as you take time to look through, you will see that the Unit 1 items have a green topper. Unit 2 is blue and Unit 3 red. And so you should see that throughout the materials. There's our workbook link, and Cindy will share that as well. So if you didn't already download it or can't find that email, then you can go ahead and get that. Also, we want you to think about the first part of it. One of the first things that we think about is how to find a place that can be your home. And so let's talk in the chat a little bit about where you might find information available on housing. Where do you think you might look to be able to find a place to call home? Let's see what everyone has to say about that. So in the chat, please share. Where do you think you might find information? Okay, Amy says Google and Facebook. Networking, online word of mouth. Okay, Zillow might be a source. Want ads, driving through neighborhoods, yeah. Okay, Zillow, for rent, other online. Yeah, the one thing I would say is we've had people respond about Craigslist in the past, and I would just say a word of caution on that. Have somebody with you if you are going to meet someone to respond to a Craigslist. Just make sure that it is on the up and up. There have been situations where some of the online ads can be a little bit sketchy, and so we want people to make sure that they are doing some checking on that. But we also want you to think about, we often look at family and friends know of places. Does anybody use Yellow Pages anymore? Maybe the online version for rent signs, the HRAs, the Housing and Redevelopment Authorities. Maybe somebody's having a moving sale, and you might inquire. Those newspapers and magazines, again, maybe online sources of those as well. Grocery store bulletin boards. I still see some things on grocery store bulletin boards once in a while. Nonprofit housing organizations, maybe a place of worship, or again, those online classified ads. So
Emily had shared in her story that her son ended up moving in late one night because of a piece in his lease. But oftentimes those family members are those transitional types of in and out for a period of time. They boomerang back and then maybe move on. But yeah, it's so important.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, everyone, for chatting with us. Okay. And, we also think about needs and wants and our priorities. And so as we begin to look at, we might have an idea of where we're looking for a place, but how do you decide what type of home will work for you? And so we likely set our priorities and identify those things that are necessary to us, the things that are most important. And we don't necessarily build our list and write these things out, but we do know those things that are musts for us, those things that are non-negotiable, that must-haves, and those things that would be deal breakers too. And so we need to think about all of those things as we begin looking for a place. And we're going to take a look at the housing needs and wants and priorities. And you will see on page 8, our worksheet that helps you to make your decision. One of the things we're going to do is to think about our needs and wants, and we're going to try an activity, and we'll give you some instructions here before we actually go into it. Okay, we're going to try to annotate. And as we are doing this, it'll be on the next slide. So just watch what we're doing right now here. In the first example here, in the first image that you see the view options menu that should be at the top of your Zoom screen. Okay. And from that, you should be able to click on the drop down arrow. Okay. And that drop down arrow will give you another, you'll see annotate as one of the choices. Okay. And when you go into annotate, you're going to get another menu across, a toolbar across, and it'll give you things like mouse, text, draw. We want you to use the stamp. And so when we get to the next slide, you will click on stamp. And actually, you can use any one of the stamps that you would choose to here. We'll go forward to the next slide then. Whoops, I'm in annotate right now, so I've got to stop because I'm going to want to, it wants me to do text or draw, so I don't want to do that. Okay, so now as we move on to the, whoops, see, it gave me that option and I don't want to actually text here, so I got to get out of that. There we go. Okay, hopefully I can, no, it's not letting me get out. I have to get out of that toolbar altogether.
Lori, I'll advance us to the next slide.
Whoops,
There we go.
Nope,
So,
that's not it.
Nope, that's not it.
We went way ahead.
There we go.
Here
Okay.
Here we go. So on this slide, again, we'll go into that view options, drop down to annotate, click on annotate. And what we want you to do in this section is take a look. We'll use the first line in under neighborhood, near bus line. Is that something that's very important to you, important or not important at all? And you can use the stamp and stamp. Somebody's got it. Emily's got it already. Amy's got it. Okay, so keep adding what's important to you there. Very important, not important, important. And go through each one of those in the neighborhood section and see what's important to you. Is it important that you're near family? Is it important that you're near work or daycare or stores or worship, or that it is a safe neighborhood, or that children can play outside, that it's a quiet neighborhood, or maybe there's something else that you would be concerned about? Oh, I see lots of things happening here now. All right. What's the other? If others are saying, if someone is saying other is very important, what is the other to you? If somebody wants to either chat or unmute for a minute.
Maybe parks or places where we can go, outdoor activities, lots of outdoor activities for adults and children, farmers markets, things like that.
Okay, thanks, Joyce. Yeah, there may be some other things. Let's take a look at the next one, then the building. Okay, and again, let's annotate and see what's important or not important to you related to the building. The one that I often hear in Rentwise trainings is the laundry facility, that is really non-negotiable, that you need to have laundry. Not hauling out. And I remember those days of hauling out my laundry, and when my washer is broken, that's my least favorite thing to do.
As folks are finishing up on this one, Lori, we can share, if you have your workbook in front of you on page 8, there is a third section that looks at the apartment units. So looking at numbers of bedrooms and specifics to that. So we shared 2 of the 3 categories on this worksheet.
Yeah, that's right. And yeah, just not enough room on the slide to do all of these. Let me just, I think I'm going to have to clear everything here. If I can do it, let's see. And clear all. Okay, there we go. And we will then move on. Okay, did that? No, that's, I gotta check here, make sure. Okay, affordable rent is the next one. Okay, then, and that's Sarah.
Great. So it's important to figure out if you can pay rent or how much you can really afford. And so as a general rule, not more than 30% of your household gross income for housing. Anything more than that, and it might be too tight for folks. So let's have just a quick conversation. What would happen if you pay for more rent than you can afford? What are the consequences or the outcomes of that? Go ahead and share responses in the chat.
And I will just say, Sarah, that I can remember a training that I did at a national conference where someone said, I don't even talk about this 30% range anymore because everyone is paying at least 40, if not 50% of their income for housing. And so consider what that might mean in your life.
And especially today, right, with housing costs so expensive for those purchasing, and that has increased a lot of the rentals. So thanks, John. Won't be able to pay your other bills. Beth saying other parts of life will suffer. Entertainment, so some of those needs or the wants get set aside. Yeah, upside down in bills, possible eviction, late fees. Thanks. Emily Sharon, I've heard also that most are paying 40 to 50%, and we'll need to find other places to cut costs. So yeah, that this standard of 30% most definitely will be adjusted. So we know when we're paying more than that, the decisions need to be made as dollars are scarce in most households. So it's important to then estimate monthly income and expenses, and we encourage people to be really realistic as they're developing that spending plan. So pretty basic, right? No shocking magical sorts of formulas here. We have folks look at their income, we have them look at their total expenses, we compare those two, and we come up with that bottom line. And if folks have a positive bottom line, great. Unfortunately, many of the people that I work with have negative bottom lines. And so then we need to make some changes. And there is a form in the workbook, just a very basic spending plan or budgeting form, or people can use a plain piece of notebook paper or an Excel spreadsheet to work on the budget. But for many of us, then we need to look at where can we cut expenses. And several of you alluded to that. Beth had said entertainment might be one way to cut expenses. What other expenses would people look to as they're trying to get that spending plan to balance? And some efforts result in more savings than others. Sometimes folks will say, well, we'll just make sure we turn the lights off, and not have lights on in a room where nobody's at. Great practice to do. It'll save a little bit, not a huge amounts. But what are some other ideas for reducing expenses? Thank you, Amy. Cooking at home instead of eating out, that can make a huge difference. Yep. Let's see if we can get one or two more ideas, and then we'll move on. I just saw an article this week, and actually I think it came from Lutheran Social Services. I'm on their listserv, and they had just a nice article about saving with high gas prices, right? Carpool and looking at a variety of things. Yeah, Emily, food costs, you talk with your residents and yourself, use Fare for All boxes, right? So take advantage of some of those community services. Christine, yep, packing lunches for outings or lunches for work, that can make a huge difference. Thank you for sharing those. So we quickly went through the budgeting and the spending plan. Definitely, if you were to do a training with clients or residents, you'd probably spend a considerable amount of time. And when we have folks in person, we might even have them really start working on those spending plans. But the next piece that we have here in the workbook is the rental survey. And I kind of think of this kind of like when I'm sitting and watching HGTV and they're going and looking at 3 properties and they're talking about the pros and cons of it. So there is a worksheet that is in the workbook, pages 9 and 10. And it just helps, it's a note-taking worksheet, right? So you can keep track of what did that first unit look like? What did the second look like? What did the third look like? And then so you can sit down and do some comparison. And we have a few examples here of, what was the security deposit, the application fee, some of those things, but then also monthly housing costs. What about the rent and the heat and utilities, and then all of the neighborhood things, kind of like when we looked at the wants and needs, similar sorts of things on there. And then the building, is it in good condition? What about parking and the laundry, and then again the unit, number of bedrooms and that type of thing. Is there a dishwasher? Is cable internet included or not? So this is a great note-taking sheet. And someone mentioned at the beginning they're helping their son who will be a first-time renter. This would be a perfect worksheet to copy off for him as he's making those decisions. We also encourage people to visit the unit or the address, the facility at different times of the day. What about nighttime, right? Are there street lights, or is it really dark and kind of creepy? What about parking? When you go visit in the middle of the day, there may seem like there's a lot of parking available, but when everybody gets off work, what does the parking situation look like? And then also talk with other renters and neighbors. Are they happy there? Are they satisfied with the services that the property manager provides? Do they have concerns about the community and the neighborhood? That's a great way to collect information. So once a unit is selected, then we need to move on to that rental application process. And so we really encourage folks to treat that application seriously, like a job application. And especially when there's a tight rental situation where there's not very many things available, you want to make sure that your application or your client's applications are considered. So be complete, be honest, be neat, make it look pretty good. And then also ask about any rental criteria before paying an application fee. Not everybody charges an application fee, but if they do, you want to make sure that you qualify. So for example, if I have a felony, perhaps they may not rent to felons. And so I want to know that before I pay that application fee. So you'll want to ask that information so that you're not wasting your money. All right. So what are the potential barriers to obtaining housing? I shared one. What are some other things? Oh, and Joyce, thanks for the recommendation. She suggests that they complete a mock application with all of the information, previous landlord numbers, et cetera, right? Keep a copy of that. That's a lot of work to pull that all together, right? And so you've got that information because it's hard to come up with that on the spot.
And we
Great
do have
suggestion.
a sample application in the workbook so that people can actually go ahead and complete that, carry that information along so that if you have to fill out an application when you are visiting the unit, you would have all the information there. One of the biggest things is not having complete information. And are you trying to hide something, or did you just honestly not have that information with you? So good to carry that along with you.
Great. Thank you, Beth. Previous evictions, a poor credit score. Amy, no rental history as well, because they like to see a previous rental history and good behavior. Unreliable references, right? So if there's a spot on that application to list references, make sure you ask those people if you can list them and make sure they're going to say something good about you. Definitely inadequate or unstable income might be another issue. Does anybody have any ideas on how you might address these or other issues with potential property managers? How do you address those if you know that you have them or you're working with a client that has some some things that might be of concern.
Yeah, Joyce has a message here in the chat about the rental resume, and we do have that option available. I don't know if it's in the, just thinking about the workbook. I don't think it's in the workbook, but I do think that in the facilitator materials for Rentwise, it is there, so that if you have someone that doesn't have that rental history, a rental resume might be a good thing to have. So what else do you have going for you? What can you say that would be a positive or show that you're a good risk for that apartment?
Not affording, being able to afford the deposit, John, can be a concern as well. So strategies or ideas on how you might address these issues with a property manager. Being upfront about a concern or an issue, and being able to negotiate or propose a alternative would be a good conversation to have, because chances are folks might be addressing those with multiple people. Yep, Joyce, being upfront and honest. Emily, encouraging them to be upfront. And if there's a letter from an organization that you are working with, if there is one, so if someone's getting services, having kind of a letter of recommendation that they've got support and assistance. Talking with the individual in person, explaining your situation and what your plan is, right? So having a plan in place. All very great recommendations. So property managers typically do a screening of folks, of prospective tenants, and they collect information. And so the property managers get the information from agencies that collect it and sell it. All right. And so property managers may charge a screening fee, or it might be part of that application fee. And if they're calling it a screening fee, they must be paying, they need to be paying someone to have that, to get that report on someone. Property managers, though, are not required to share the screening reports with potential renters, but they must provide contact information about the agency. So if they tell a tenant that, or a potential tenant that, no, we're not going to rent to you because there is bad stuff in the screening report, they don't need to give the report, but they need to tell you what screening agency they use, so that that individual could go to that screening agency and see what, request information on what's in there and correct any mistakes. So do know that they are checking out a wide variety of information, those past rental situations, credit history perhaps would be part of that as well. So unfortunately, it may be difficult to escape one's past, because it does follow us in this type of screening. Property managers must still comply with laws under the Fair Housing Act. And so this applies to property managers, real estate brokers, lenders, neighbors, but it provides equal treatment for all inquiries and applications. And part of this as well stipulates that there's any repairs that need to be made, they need to be made in the same manner for all renters. And there are some uniform consequences for lease violations. So we do have information in the materials about the Fair Housing Act. Now, property managers may request an individual social security number or their ITIN number, names of all people who will live in the unit. That's part of a safety issue, right? With fire codes and everything. They want to know who is going to be living there. They can ask for references. And again, income, employers, names and dates when you worked there, length of time at the current job. All of that information is helpful as they are making decisions about who to rent to. Okay. But there's certain things that they may not request. Your age, marital status, gender, if you are participating in public assistance programs, and they can't ask for a detailed financial information. So some things they can request, other things that they can't. Yep. Okay. So we encourage folks to get a copy of their own credit report to find out what's in there and to see if there are any issues or concerns that maybe need to be addressed before they apply for a unit to live in. And so annualcreditreport.com, www.annualcreditreport.com is the free site to go to get your credit report from each of the 3 credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. Through this, you are able to get a copy of the report, but not the score. But what I really think is important is what's in the report. What is it saying about you? All of those things. So we're going to go to the next slide here. This is a very small example here of a
Sarah,
credit.
just wanted to mention too that with the annualcreditreport.com for another week or so until April 20th, you're able to get weekly credit reports through COVID. That's going to end. So if you want to take advantage of it, do it now.
Yeah, that was an interesting service available through COVID. Yeah, hopefully if people were requesting their reports on a weekly basis, they were also taking action and steps to improve whatever they were concerned about, or if they were just monitoring for identity theft issues. Thanks, Lori. Okay, so a credit report is going to have all kinds of information on it. Property managers are typically looking for a potential renter's history of paying bills and debts. They want to see that people are responsible and paying things on time. And from that history, the property manager can really determine how reliable that renter might be based on that past history. And so helping any clients or people that you're working with, helping them establish those good behaviors of getting things paid on time is really important. All right. If there are mistakes in a person's credit report, they can be fixed. And we do have information in the workbook on how to correct those. But in order to identify those mistakes, you need to read the report very carefully and spend just a little bit of time. For example, maybe there's a debt that's listed twice in it, or maybe there's a car payment that a car loan that you paid off 10 months ago and it's still showing that you owe money on it. You'll want to read those reports carefully and then get those corrected. So when property managers are doing their screening, you've got the best report out there possible. So making those corrections is really important. So once an individual gets past that application process and they're called and said, yes, the unit is yours, then there's the lease agreement. And we could probably spend an hour on lease agreements by themselves. But the lease or rental agreement is that contract between the property manager and the tenant. And was it Amy who shared the story about their son with the lease that allowed for eviction at midnight, right? So they hadn't read the details in the lease. And so it's so very important for folks to read that lease very carefully before you sign it, so you understand what is in there. Leases can be written or verbal. Written ones are definitely nicer because that puts everybody on the same page and you can go back to it, and written leases or agreements are easier to enforce. So lease agreements really set the terms and the conditions of the rental and all of the details. And it typically says how long are you signing this lease for? How long are you responsible? Many are for 12 months or a year. Some might be month to month. Some might be 18 months or longer. So you need to know how long you're committed there. And so we're going to go to the next. Oh, we're going to go back. Yep. So I guess that was that. But in there also, there's other kinds of information. And if anybody has any other stories about things that they got caught on in a lease. For example, can you have pets? We talked earlier about providing names of who's going to live there. How many people can live in the unit? What about visitors? Can my cousin from Georgia, can they come and stay for a month? Or does my lease say I can only have visitors for 7 days at a time? What about parking? Who pays which utilities? There is so much information in this, and you can see in the little house of Wordle, right? Moving out, how do I report problems? The pets, parking, when does it end? Who's paying utilities? When is the rent due? What's the late payment if I don't pay on time? What about maintenance, visitors, repairs? So tons of information in that lease agreement. If somebody is a first-time renter, they may want to have somebody eyeball that with them. Oftentimes property managers might be pressuring them. Okay, we need to, give me the first month's rent and the security deposit, and let's sign this and move on. And but if someone wants to bring someone with them to read through that and take the time necessary, and then the tenant should get a copy of that, and emphasizing it's important to keep that in a safe place where you know where it is, but spend time again reading and understanding that. Emily, wow, I didn't know that. Okay, the credit reports. It was a student housing thing that their lease ended middle of the month. Wow. And then month-to-month leases that still have a 60-day notice. So it really is more like a 2-month lease. People get caught up in that one, right? So reading the details, how much of a notice do I need to give in order to move out? And you would think on a month-to-month, it would be a month, but in the example that Emily's giving, not the case. All right. So it's important as well for Lori, this is your slide.
Yes.
I'm just on a roll, or I'm going to pass it back to Lori.
We just keep on going.
You just need to interrupt me. Oh, here we go.
The other thing I was going to say about the lease agreement, not only keep it where it's safe, but also you will find that there are times that you can refer back to it. If you ever have questions about something, and gosh, does it say it in the lease agreement? That's always your go-to for any information that you're looking for. Another piece of that is a rental condition. In our workbook, we have on page 33, the Minnesota Standard Residential Lease Agreement. And in that, you will see that there is also a rental condition piece in there. There's a lot of information in that lease. Part of it is, let's see, maybe we didn't include the residential rental condition checklist, but know that if you were to go and download that from the real estate site, Minnesota Real Estate, you would find that has a rental condition checklist as well. And so you may often find it because what will happen, property managers will use that basic lease and find that there is a rental condition checklist within that lease agreement. So the rental condition checklist is something that you're going to use upon moving in. So before you move in, you're going to go through this with the property manager and make sure that everything's in good condition. Are there things missing? Are there things damaged or dirty? Things that show excessive wear? Are there things that need to be replaced or need to be cleaned or repaired? That's important to do and to sign off of it. Both parties should sign off on it before you're moving in. The other thing that you should do is receive a copy of that. So you have that as a part, and again, it could be part of your lease depending on the lease that you receive. You're going to come back to that when you move out. And so it's important to know that everything has been taken care of that was intended to. There should be some approximate dates that are involved with this as well, when these items would be completed. And if they're not done, then you've got something to fall back on with the property manager to say, hey, this wasn't attended to like you indicated it would be.
Yep. And on page 41 in the workbook, as Joyce indicated, it suggests take pictures of the unit before you move in. So you know where that doorknob made a hole in the wall behind, where it slams into. Take a photo of that and perhaps print it out so there's a date on that, so you can document when you move out that hole in the wall was there when I moved in, and I'm not going to pay for it.
Yeah, very important things to take care of. Okay, and let's just talk about, that's starting off with that signing the lease agreement and going through that rental condition checklist, all important to kind of set a stage of what your expectation, that you have expectations of the property manager, and they have expectations of you. It is a business relationship. So let's talk about why it might be important for you to get along with not only the property manager, but the neighbors surrounding you. So let's think about that. Why do you have to think about getting along with your property manager and neighbors? Why is that important to you? What do you think? Well, let's give you a start here so that you can be thinking about what these might be. So you want to help to develop a positive relationship. There's the potential that they could provide you some reference in the future when you move to another unit. It eases your process of asking for repairs to be made and helps resolve conflicts, hopefully in a safe and productive way. And so you want to, again, be prepared to make this a business relationship, to know that they've got your back if you need to ask a question, and to have a repair made, for example. Yeah, we have a couple of comments here now. Having peace at home, feeling comfortable, with your neighbors, have a pleasant environment around you. Yeah, all important, and if you were to need to make a late payment for some reason, to have that positive relationship that you could go and say, this is one time I'm going to do this on this date, and provide some background information as to why this might occur. If you have a positive relationship to start with, and if you have shown to be a reliable renter and that follows through, then that's probably not going to be as big of a deal as, let's say, if they have to come to you each month and find you in order to pay your rent or things like that. So important that we, get along with not only the property manager, but also those neighbors. If you get along with those neighbors, the likelihood is you won't have complaints related to, if one time you're playing music loudly and they might come to you and ask for you to turn that down rather than immediately going to the property manager. Another thing is, when we are getting along with the property manager, it does not mean that you are the one that is complaining about others all the time and making, don't make extra requests or don't make extra work all the time for that property manager. You need to be seen as an agreeable person that asks for the things that you need, but also not to, be the one that is always in the face of that property manager as well. When we think about those communication skills, and getting along with both the property manager and the neighbors, we want to think about those communication styles that we all have. And Unit 2, as we talk about sustaining or keeping our home environment, Unit 2 really does involve a lot of communication skills. And part of that is thinking about the way we verbalize and maybe just the nonverbal cues that we give as well. We often have differences that are related to our personality, our gender, our culture, that we don't maybe recognize as such. And so we need to think about how people communicate differently and really take into consideration some of those differences. You see the example here on the screen. In some countries, looking at someone directly would be a sign of disrespect. And in other countries, if you're not making eye contact, that's interpreted differently, and it might be seen as being dishonest, for example, or trying to evade someone. And so we have to recognize those differences and be able to, move a little bit with our communication and to adapt as we are communicating with different individuals as well. Communicating regularly with a property manager can keep you informed and make it easier to talk to them if a problem should arise. And, again, that paying rent on time shows dependability. Contacting them if you have a problem is something that you will want to do. And here are some steps that you can use related to that. You want to document the situation before you call. Oftentimes now there are online forms that you need to be filling out. And so again, your rental agreement may show some of that information where you would find those things. You may also have a portal to pay. I know in my mom's building, payments are made for rent online, and then you also are submitting any requests online. Know how you're supposed to report those things, document your information. As Sarah said, if that doorknob has gone through the wall behind the door, you need to be able to document that. Call and explain the situation or report it online as you were supposed to. Restate whatever the property manager has said in response to you, so that you make sure that you are getting the information correctly. And then respond again to what the property manager has said. Another thing to do is to think about making sure that you get a deadline on some of these things if you are, for example, asking for repairs. Again, active listening is what we're encouraging here. You're sharing in your own words what has been said to make sure that you are clarifying any situation. You want to make sure that you understand fully. We're probably not going to spend as much time on the iMessages as we had intended to do, but a positive iMessage is something that is intended to communicate positively. It lets you share your feelings without attacking someone. And if you are hurt or upset, you very often might be accusatory in what you say, and we want to try to avoid that and take responsibility for what our feelings are. Again, here, use I. Discuss one problem at a time. Don't bring the whole laundry list of items that you might have thought about. Describe the situation. Don't call other people names or make accusations, and start a conversation when you can stay calm. And basic outline here is to address the feelings of yourself as the speaker, the action that causes you to feel badly about something, the consequence of what happens, and the request that you would like to change. And so just quickly, I'll just do one example here. Move your car or I'm getting it towed. Okay. If we were to change that situation and make it an I message, I found a car in my parking spot and it upset me. I would like to remedy the situation. Is it possible that you could move your car? I need to park there so I will not get towed. And so to ask what can be done, what can be changed. And maybe there's a situation where someone else is parking in their spot, for example. And so addressing it calmly and getting your feelings out so you can remedy the problem. We won't go through others here. We've got only 10 minutes left. So.
All right. I think we're down to even less than 10 because we're just so passionate about this content. So I'm going to do some high points on this next section. So when we think about the the care of a property, we typically think about normal wear and tear. And so why is it important for folks to think about that? If you could put some comments in the chat. And then do you also have thoughts about what's the difference between normal wear and tear and deductible damage? And when we talk about deductible damage, that's what they would deduct from your security or your damage deposit to cover those things. So what's the difference between some of those? You know, I think about things in my house as well. In normal wear and tear, those common things that happen. Deductible damage. Yep, a 20-year-old fridge that stops working. So Amy, you're saying that's normal wear and tear, right? It's going to die someday. Emily, normal wear and tear, the age of the appliance, the carpets, what condition are those in? Fingerprints, carpet wear, right? Those are normal things that we expect. But then when we talk about the deductible damage, that would be the doorknob into the sheetrock, or we had a rental property early in our marriage, and one of the tenants had a cat, and where she had the litter box on the wood floor ended up with a huge stain there, and we had to totally refinish that bedroom floor. So that would be deductible damage. So really thinking about the difference and what tenants are responsible for and how they can take care to not do result in those deductible damages. And Joyce said broken windows, bleach stains, iron burns on the carpet. That's a new one for me. So definitely knowing those differences. We also think about healthy homes and what does it take to have a healthy home. And you can see these things here, and so there's some steps that folks can take to keep their homes healthy and clean. But we're gonna go here. Keeping your home clean means less chance of illness and injuries, less wear and tear on the home, right? So if I keep my carpet vacuumed, it's gonna last longer than if everyone's traipsing in with shoes and there's gravel and dirt in there. It's gonna wear out quicker. So we take it from normal wear and tear to deductible damage. If we keep it clean, there's fewer deductions on that security deposit. You'll be able to move out quicker when that time comes. Hopefully less insects and rodents, less fire hazards, less time finding things. That's what I need to work on. So getting rid of the clutter. And then this last one is a reality for some families, less chance of child protection services coming into the home due to lack of cleanliness. So keeping a house clean, a home clean has a lot of benefits. So if you are working with residents or others, or your young son that's having his first rental experience, equipping them with the knowledge and the skills and the tools to keep the home clean. And there's basic cleaners and basic supplies that are really beneficial, so folks are set up to do that. Also being very aware of if there are any pests out there. And so they can damage a lot of things. They like food. They hide in cardboard boxes. And so taking steps to work through getting rid of the pets is important, and being very careful with any chemicals that are being used as well. So there's information in our resources on that. So some of the health and safety issues, if there's excess moisture in the home, that could lend to mold problems. We also want to be cautious and monitor carbon monoxide and radon. If there's old paint in the home, or super old linoleum that might have that would be asbestos with the linoleum, but the lead paint. So being careful with those sorts of things. Monitor and watch for electrical safety. I know Joyce had indicated early on, plug that cell phone charger into every outlet. I'm assuming, so you're saying to make sure that they're working, right? And then just managing that clutter and keeping a path to get out of the unit as needed. So we have that fire and emergency safety. Thanks, Christine. Kids spilling on the carpet, right? That red Kool-Aid or maybe my red glass of wine at the end of the night too would do that as well, but being cautious. When requesting repairs, we're going to bounce back to that communication conversation, but again, using those communication skills, be specific about what needs to be repaired, when was it noticed, describe the issue. Share when it's convenient to have that repair done. And we've heard over and over from landlords or property managers that they would love to have the conversation about the repair need rather than having a tenant do it themselves. Now, they may come to some kind of arrangement where the tenant does the repair, but it seems property managers are really wanting to be in the know, and they want to be contacted so that it can be done correctly and they can have that conversation. Renter's insurance, and we are down to just a minute. Renter's insurance is a good deal, pretty cheap to have. It covers a lot of different things. And so we really encourage folks to look at that. It can replace personal belongings if there were a fire or other disaster. It could cover living expenses if the unit is unlivable for a period of time. And it could also provide some personal liability issue coverage due to negligence. So we encourage folks to check that out. We also want folks to be aware of a certificate of rent paid. So this is a document that property managers need to give tenants by February 1st of each year for the prior year. And this is a document that can then be used on taxes. So they may be eligible for a property tax refund based on household income and property taxes paid on primary residences. But so know that this is a thing, and tenants need to be aware of it. And so helping folks understand that and use that document at tax time. Lori, what do you want to do? We're at the top of the hour.
Yeah, we'll just take a couple quick minutes here and finish things out, just because there are some important things to think about here, especially related to eviction. So we do have a moving checklist. Know that is on the workbook, page 60. You can check that out as you are able to. Let's move on. Security deposits. Very often people are worried about getting their security deposit back. And sometimes people think that because they have paid their security deposit that they can just up and leave, and the security deposit covers the last month's rent. That's not the case. And we do have some items related to having the security deposit refunded. Remember that giving written notice is probably required by your lease agreement. Check that lease agreement. As I said, you're going back to that lease agreement for every rule or regulation that you need to follow. Stay for the term of the lease. Don't just up and leave. One of the things we often hear from property managers is they are left with things when people just up and leave, expecting that they are going to pay with their security deposit. Leave your premises clean, pay the last month's rent, return the keys, the garage door openers, anything else associated with that unit, and let people know where you're going to be, and provide that address in case you are able to get that security deposit refunded. Okay, again, you're going to review that checklist, that rental condition checklist, and have that signed off before you leave. That shows that property was left in good condition, right? Or accounts for anything that may not have been in good condition. And that information that within 21 days, that security deposit should be returned. Simple interest provided on that money as well. If you don't receive that refund or explanation, you might be able to sue for that amount. There should not, again, be deductions for that normal wear and tear. Again, we have some information around notice of ending tenancy, how to write that letter, and that's in the workbook as well. We want to make sure that you think about avoiding eviction. And this is one of the big things we hear oftentimes. Pay your rent on time. If you're not paying rent on time and it happens regularly, there can be eviction. Pay attention to that lease agreement. Document things that have occurred. So if you have good records, you have something to fall back on, and take that eviction action seriously if you receive it. Don't just throw it in a pile of other mail, and it needs to be opened. You need to respond to it, and you can contact legal aid if you need help in addressing that as well. You know, it's important to recognize that you want to avoid that eviction if you can do that. You could lose your home. You could still owe damages. If you go to court, you may end up losing the case and still owe money. Your credit score can be damaged, and it is a matter of public information. And we won't go through all the steps in eviction, but just there is good information in that landlord and tenant handbook. Get a hold of that from the Minnesota Attorney General's office. There's also the legal aid piece there as well. Okay, we are 4 minutes over at this point.
Yep, I'm going to take 2 more minutes. We will be sending a follow-up email out with a PDF of the PowerPoint slides. So because we went so fast through, many of them you'll have that in the next 24 to 48 hours. We'll get that sent out to you. And we will also be sharing a link to the Cindy, maybe you could put a link to the evaluation in the chat. So we do have that, and we'll include that in the email as well. If you need a certificate of participation, please do complete the evaluation, and there's a question in there that asks, do you need a certificate? Respond yes, and provide your name and email, and that'll show up in your email box. Also note that about 30 days after the end of this series, we'll be sending a second email with a few more evaluation questions to see what you've been thinking about, if you took any actions. And then also, but watch for that email, because there will be a playlist with a link to all of the recordings for all of the housing related webinars that we're doing. So for those that had to leave early, you can fast forward to the last 5 or 10 minutes. So watch for that follow-up email. We do have some other things coming up. Some of our Latino colleagues are doing something similar to this on tips on renting a home on April 14th. And then they also have a few additional webinars coming up in April related to school success, the renting a home, bullying, that kind of thing. We do have a food composting 101 webinar tomorrow. I am so excited to do that one. And then reducing your family's carbon footprint. Finding balance. I think I'm going to go to the April 20th one on how to create balance in chaos. And then we do have some financial related ones. Our colleagues Sam and Sharon are doing some Thrifty Thursdays. So tomorrow on using a calendar system, and you can see the others there.
And it is financial capability month. So this is a good time to make that a priority.
It is, definitely. So take advantage of those. We will include in that follow-up email a couple flyers with all of these webinars. And then that last link there will get you to all of Extension's webinars. And you'll have this link in the follow-up email too on how to connect with us on social media. Are there any final questions? Thank you to those of you that hung in. I made a big note that next time we plan this webinar, we should go 75 or 90 minutes. So there's just so much information. Any final questions or comments? Thank you, everybody.
As people are just thinking about those last comments or questions, if you are interested, we do have information around our online Rentwise Train the Trainer. So as providers, if you're interested, we have a 30-minute that is for just for anyone that needs rental information for their own use. That's Renter 101. That's available free online. We can get you information on any of those if you should need them. We can put those links in the follow-up as well.
Great. Thanks, Joyce. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. I just wanted to say this was great. And I love the fact that it just brings me back around. And this
Yeah,
is,
right.
I'm very excited about this.
Well, and I appreciated your comments in the chat, right? You
Yeah.
were filling in the details that we couldn't squeeze into an hour. So we encourage
I had
folks
to stop myself.
no, no, we welcome that,
No,
no doubt
And we
at
narrowed
all.
it into one.
So we encourage folks to check out that workbook, and there's lots of details in there. So thanks everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.